Welcome to another episode of the Man That Can Projects podcast. Today, I am so excited to have Kevin Hines joining us. Now, Kevin and I have been going back and forth to make this episode come to life for a very long time. And, you know, I truly appreciate your time. And I know it's extremely valuable, but you are having such an incredible impact in the world. I know you've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people around suicide prevention, and your own story in sharing all that. I'm just going to read off a few things because you've done so many incredible things. And we've got a mutual friend, Matt Runnels, and, you know, I've spoken to him about you and I've followed your journey before we even got to connect. So for me, it's, you know, I'm so grateful for the work you've done because you've impacted me before we actually met. So appreciate that. And there will be a lot of blokes listening to this and ladies as well that, you know, will be super inspired or will be able to share your story with other people. But for those who are just hearing about Kevin for the first time, you're obviously a storyteller at heart. And if you're watching the YouTube, you'll be able to see Kev's setup in the background, a massive fan of Star Wars and superheroes and everything like that. And it's a great setup there. I love it. I'm just continuing to look at who else I know there. You're a best-selling author, a global public speaker, and an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Now, that's how I first came across you. My mum recommended I watch your documentary, and it was extremely inspiring. So in the year 2000, you attempted to take your life by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, which I'm sure you'll share how big that is and everything like that. But for those listening, Google it. It's quite a large bridge. And many factors contributed to your miraculous survival. And I won't give away the one that blew my mind with that, but I'd love you to share that. So your will to live and stay mentally well has inspired people worldwide. Your compelling story has touched diverse global audiences within colleges, universities, high schools, corporations, military, with clinicians, health and medical communities, law enforcement organizations, and various other industries. That was like a little tongue twister there. And thousands have communicated to Hines that your story has helped save their lives. And I don't doubt that for a moment. You've reached millions with your story. And obviously the bridge, the documentary that I was recommending or talking about was a huge one. And we're also going to talk about your new book, The Third Rail, and in quotations, in my mania, I became. And I'm really excited to hear more about that. But Kev, that's probably one of the longest and most exciting introductions I've ever done. Over to you, mate.
Oh, thank you, brother. Well, it's great to be here with you finally. I know I had a bunch of scheduled snafus that kept us apart, but glad to be here on the Man That Can Project podcast, because it's what you're doing is amazing. I've been watching what you're doing after I got introduced to you by Matty Runnels, our good mutual friend there in Australia. Matt was in the film Suicidal, The Ripple Effect. He's a phenomenal young man. And I've been watching what you're doing online. It's great to see the work you're doing. So I'm excited to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And one day in the future, I know we're going to be able to catch up and have a coffee and share some more stories. But let's dive straight into it. You know, your story is incredible. And for those who haven't heard it, I'd love you to give a bit of a background. You know, you survived a jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. What led to that point? Like, do you just want to give us a background of what led to that point and everything that happened around that and where we're at now?
Absolutely. And to understand what led me to go to the Golden Gate Bridge and jump off in a swirling depression and manic behavior and paranoid delusions and hallucinations, auditory and visual, all of the above, including not to mention the panic attacks I was having on the way there. We have to stop here and go back. In order to understand what led me there, you have to understand where I came from. I came from truly humble beginnings. I'm adopted. My biological parents both had manic depression, what we today call bipolar disorder, the very same brain disease I'd be diagnosed with at 17 and a half years of age, 2 years prior to jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And I had a very traumatic infancy. My birth parents fed me and my brother what they could steal. Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk was my diet for the formative months of my life. And you can only imagine, those are terrible processed food that should never be fed to an infant. but that's all they had the ability to get because they could steal it from the local pharmacy. And they sadly, after they had me, succumbed to substance use disorder, drugs and alcohol. After their diagnosis with manic depression, my mother's double diagnosis with schizophrenia, and a triple diagnosis with substance use disorder, they would leave me and my brother unattended to go do score or sell drugs. Now, let me make it abundantly clear. They weren't bad people. They loved me and my brother dearly, but they couldn't take care of us. They had no feasible legal income, thus they had to hustle to survive, doing scoring and selling drugs. That was their life. And my brother and I were infants left in seedy motels, in crack motels, the kind of places you paid for by the hour, and if you didn't, you were out. And my mom and dad did whatever they had to do, however illegal, to pay on that hour by that hour. That was our life. Until one fateful day when seedy motel clerk makes his most unseedy decision and calls the police. And the police come in with Child Protective Services, hearing our screams and cries one too many times, and they take us into protective custody and they place us into the foster care system, where my brother and I bounce around from home to home, no stability, both catch a vicious strain of bronchitis and he dies. I immediately develop a severe detachment disorder from reality and abandonment issues that follow me until today. So that's where my life began, in a really tumultuous way, in a dangerous place. I bounced around from home to home. Nobody wanted to keep me because I was such a sickly kid. I was violently ill all day, every day in all the foster homes. They just kept giving me back into the system until I landed in the home of Pat and Debbie Hines. And as you know, my last name is Hines. You know this works out, so spoiler alert. But they fought through the physical ailments, recognizing my mom is Debbie Hines is a nurse, recognizing that my gut to brain health was very poor because of what I've been fed for so long. I had a distended belly from the filled with liquid and a bruise from the top of my sternum to the bottom of my abdomen from being malnourished for so long. Debbie nursed me back to health, really. She got me healthy again, physically, by feeding me proper foods and healthy, nutrient-dense foods and whole foods. And I finally, after 30 days of being in the Hines home with no sleep for me or Debbie, I finally acclimated and slept like a baby one night, you know, or like a rock rather, because babies don't sleep. And Debbie recounts in her journal of those days, which is how I know the story, that she came to my crib on the 30th night and said, Gio, because my name was not Kevin Hines, that's my adopted name. My biological name is Giovanni. And she said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. But if you don't knock this off, we're going to have to give you back. A complete contradiction. But she said that was the first night in 30 days that we both slept soundly, as if my infant mind had fully heard and understood her words. And the next morning, she said, I looked up at her and I smiled. And she claims it was a moment we had, but I think it was just gas. But either way, on that next day, two things became abundantly clear. I was home and I was a Hines. And growing up in that household was a beautiful thing. We needed nor wanted for anything. Pat and Debbie Hines worked tirelessly for everything they ever earned the hard way. They gave us the world. They took in 3 kids from 3 separate homes into one household, melting pot of a family. I'm mixed. My brother's black, my sister's white. And people that looked at us walking down the street were very confused. They didn't know what to make of it. Women would cross the street to talk to my mom when she walked with the 3 of us. And they would say in their prejudicial tone, excuse me, miss, how did all of that happen? To which my mom would reply, oh, you know, different fathers, you know, which was only epic because it was true. But really, growing up in that household, I thought to myself, how can anything go sideways from here? And here's where we get back to that Golden Gate Bridge jump. At 17, my world fell apart. My world crumbled beneath my legs. I developed the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. I had all the symptoms. I had all the signs, struggling terribly, but I was still hiding the severity of my symptoms from my family and friends. They only knew what was on the surface. They didn't know how desperate I had become on the inside. They didn't know that I had been seeing and hearing things that no one else could see or hear for months. They didn't know that I'd been having paranoid delusions for the better part of the whole year, believing people were out to get me, trying to hurt me, trying to kill me. And at 19 years of age, while living with my father, as my parents got divorced when I was 18, at 19 years of age, I broke down and I wrote a suicide note. And my plan was to go to the Golden Gate Bridge and take my life. What led me there? The greatest despair you can possibly think of. An unrelenting, unequivocal amount of lethal emotional pain. The common denominator of why people attempt and die by suicide is lethal emotional pain. I think it's one of your questions that you sent me was why do people die by suicide? And it's because they come to a place in their mental instability. It doesn't have to be mental illness. That's not the only reason why. It could be trauma. They come to a place in such a traumatic moment where they believe they have no other option. They believe they have no other way out. And it's just simply not true. Suicidal thoughts and ideations are the greatest liars we know. We just can't see it. Well, I survived my attempt, a 250-foot drop, a 95-mile-an-hour fall, closing in on the speed of terminal velocity, 25 stories in 4 seconds, praying the entire way down that I would live. Hitting the water, going down 70 feet beneath the water surface, opening my eyes, and now I'm drowning and I don't know what to do. Frantically swimming in any direction, I started going down. Reversed my position, shot for the surface. Got closer and closer to it, but I couldn't. I was running out of air. I was convulsing. I thought, I'm going to die here. No one's going to know that I didn't want to do this. No one's going to know that I knew I made a mistake. Because in the millisecond that my hands left that rail, it was an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. And for people all around the world who've survived suicide attempts, not all of them, but a great many of them have come forward to say that at the moment they thought that it was all going to be over, they had an instantaneous regret from their actions, almost like it's instinctual. Why? Because I believe people don't really want to die. They simply believe they have to, and those are two categorically different things. Also, I think they recognize in that moment that their thoughts don't have to become their actions. As in their thoughts don't have to own, rule, or define what they do next, but they think it's too late. And for me, that was the position I found myself in. The water, as I flailed to stay afloat, I kept going under. I thought, no one's coming for me. This is where I go. I'm going to die here. And I don't want to. What a mistake. And that's when something began to circle beneath me. Something large and very shiny and very, very, very slimy and very, very alive. And I remember thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't die jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and a shark is going to devour me. This is ridiculous. And it turned out it was no shark at all. It was a sea lion. And the people above looking down believed it to be keeping my body afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. And how lucky I was and blessed that that sea lion came to me in the time and manner in which it did before I would drown and set in hypothermia and die. The Coast Guard boat arrived. They fished me onto a flatboard, put me in a neck brace, and they started asking questions. And I couldn't answer the simplest question they asked me. Why did you do that? And I said, I don't know. I thought I had to die today. And I was wrong. I never had to attempt in the first place. I needed to ask for help. And if we can get people who believe they can't ask for help to do so all around the world more often, we can save some lives.
Why do you feel you couldn't ask for help? Like for you at that point and knowing what you know now, what do you feel was holding you back from asking for help?
My own personal discrimination against myself. I believe that if I asked for help, they would lock me up in a white-walled padded room and throw away the key. I believe they would put me in a straitjacket and leave me there to rot. My only semblance of understanding of a psych unit was from two films. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson and Terminator 2 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And those are two places I didn't want to be. And I feared that kind of reality, which isn't the reality, by the way. And now, having been in 9 psych ward stays in the last 14 years for my suicidal ideation, and the first 3 were involuntary. I was forced in against my will, what's called 5150 in California, where you're forced in against your will because of your behavior. The next 6 psych ward stays, I turned to my wife and I said, I need to be in there or I won't be here. I was self-aware with my diagnosis, self-aware with my disease, self-aware with my suicidal ideation. I have lived 20 years past the day I should have died, living with chronic thoughts of suicide, never attempting again by using these tools in my toolbox. And that's really where I'm at today. I work tirelessly for my better brain health, and I stay ahead of the curve. I read everything I can about bipolar disorder, everything I can about depression, everything I can about suicide prevention. I educate myself so I can be prepared to implement those tools and techniques into my regimen so I can stay alive, stay well to the best of my ability, and stay here. It's a battle, it's a journey. It's been arduous at times, but I'm going to wage that battle, and I'm going to win every time. I'm going to live with this disease. It's not going to defeat me. I'm just going to build myself brick by brick from the ground up and build a wall around myself to protect my well-being.
Thanks for sharing that first point as well about like your idea of, or obviously why you didn't reach out to help, because you had a preconceived idea of maybe what would have happened and been thrown in that white room, which is what you saw on a film. And I think there's a lot of us who have an idea of how maybe our friends will think about us. And I know that was one of the questions one of the lads asked was, how do you talk about your problems with your friends without being looked at like you're crazy? And there is a stigma around mental health and mental illness, but there's also a huge lack of understanding. And I think it's improving, and you'd probably a huge driving force behind that. But as you found out, first and foremost, it's not what you first originally thought it was. No. And doing what you did now by finding out your tool strategy, or building that toolkit, but also being able to talk about it more, you're educating yourself on what it's actually like.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most important things all of us do, especially for those who are having suicidal ideations, or experiencing anxiety, or any challenge with your mind or your emotions, is start exploring what it's actually like, what the road to recovery is like, what helps out there, because there is so much more available than there was 10 years ago, and it's only getting better.
Absolutely. There's so many resources now. I mean, you look on, if we look at social media as a negative, which it can be, too much time on screens, we know, is detrimental to kids' mental health, but not if they're looking at the right things. Not if they're looking at your podcast, my videos online on YouTube, which are all developed to keep people here and change their lives. They're designed to do that. They're designed to have that effect. And we get letters from all around the world saying that's exactly what they do. So if we find a way to teach young to old alike that there's a plethora of new resources out there for the world to see, to utilize, to educate themselves, to fight their own pain, then we could potentially live in a world that is working every day to better their brain health, and a world that is staying alive even while they have suicidal thoughts. They can still have the thoughts, they can still have the ideas, they can still have the notion, but instead of acting upon those thoughts, they're looking into resources that are quite available now and quite reachable and attainable, and they're staying here. Like that's a real legitimate possibility. And this discrimination, or what people call stigma, let's call it what it is. We don't call bigotry and racism and prejudice stigma. We call it bigotry, racism, and prejudice. Let's call it what it is when it comes to those with mental health diagnoses. There is a great discrimination and marginalization against those who live with these ailments. And we say, snap out of it, move on, get over it. What's wrong with you? pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We don't say that when someone has liver, heart, lung, or kidney disease. We flock to the hospital and say, I'm here for you. What do you need? That's where we need to get with mental health. Flocking to the hospital with that teddy bear, those flowers, and that card, and saying, what do you need? I got your back.
Do you think
and
it's
not just one? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, you go. I think that's 100% correct. Like you break an arm, people are signing the cast is with mental health. I wanted to ask as well, like for yourself, along your life, was there a certain, like, do you remember the first time you started having suicidal ideations? Because one of my first mates took his life when we were 14. He was found hanging in a bus shelter, and I'd never heard of suicide. Like this was, what am I now, 30? So this is 16 years ago. Never heard of it. And it was on the front page of our paper. They didn't talk about suicide. They just said, and then there was no support or anything to help. And, I still remember pulling that paper out from under my bed and crying about it, but not really. No, there was no help back then. But also, I still never understood really what the fuck was happening. And I think throughout my life, as I've had moments of, thinking about, even here, you jump off a balcony or drive a car into a tree and things like that. But I would never talk about it because I'm like, that makes me fucked up or that makes me broken. But I've found over the years now that I do talk about it, and I still do to this day, where I have moments where I'm like, it could be easier. And people still do look at you like maybe you do need help. But I also, much like yourself, Kevin, I believe I have so many tools, tips, and strategies and great people around me that for me, it's just, this is what's happening. And sometimes I'm in a down funk, but I also know that I'm got the right stuff in place to get through it, even if it, knocks me down for a few days or so. So
Yeah.
one of the things and the reasons why I started the Man That Can project is getting blokes talking, right? But people talking, because I think it is more common than people realize that we do have thoughts where we're like, well, maybe it is going to be better if I'm not here, or it would be easier for this person, that person. And I think it needs to be normalized, because I still consider myself a normal human being and someone who's thriving. And I know thriving is something that you believe in rather than just surviving. We're here to thrive, and we can go through the ebbs and flows of life. But so taking it back, like, was there a specific time for you where you first had those suicidal ideations? Because for me, it never started till I was sort of 18, 19, but I'd even experienced a mate taking his life 6 years before that.
Yeah, those thoughts came to me initially in 2019, a year before my attempt. And I began to self-harm in the middle of this situation. And I had a CD player on playing DMX's CD. And it was playing one of the songs, which had a prayer in it. And you hear Dark Man X or Earl Simmons's voice. And right as I was about to take action, the voice says, Lord, I'm in so much pain. Please take me away. And then God comes in and says, no, I put you here to do a job and your work ain't done. To live is to suffer, but you're still my son. And there will be a time when you shine as bright as the stars, but there won't be his or hers, just ours. And I stopped what I was doing. And I just unblocked the lock on my door, and I just cried. And that was my initial attempt that I didn't tell anybody about until after I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. I kept that in for a year and some change because of shame and discrimination. If I had told my family about that then, they would have gotten me the help I needed. I would never have ended up at the Golden Gate Bridge. But hindsight is always 20/20, right?
Definitely.
So that was the first situation where I was in that place. It was a whole year and a half until I actually attempted it in 2000, or a whole year. And listen, I'm just glad I get to exist, because with my suicidal crises that I've had over the years, I could have been gone multiple times. Yet here I am with you, right? And this is the point right here, right now, today, to live in the present every single day, one day at a time, not to focus on the future and all these great things we can do, or worry about the future and all the terrifying things that could happen. It's all a waste of time. It's important to plan and strategize, but you can't get over involved in that stuff. And not to worry what was in the past or what happened 5, 10, 15 years ago and the mistakes you made. Make up for those mistakes by being good today. Make up for those mistakes by forgiving yourself and moving forward and being kind and compassionate, loving and caring, empathetic and non-judgmental to literally every person you come into contact with, because you never know what they've gone through or what they're going through right now. Most importantly, be kind to yourself because you deserve it.
What does that look like? And you know how we spoke about the tools and like, I guess your toolkit that's helped you, or that you've found, right? You've built that toolkit that's allowed you to stay and live in, I guess, recovery, right? Because every day is an opportunity to keep growing. Like we don't just get better and stay better. We have to continue,
No.
prevention is better than cure. And every day I have practices that I do to help give myself the best chance of feeling unreal. And some days it doesn't work. Some days my mind takes over. But for yourself, you spoke about your toolkit. What's in there for you, and what do you sort of recommend for people?
Yeah, so it was in my third psych ward stay of 9 in 14 years that I read an article in Time magazine. My uncle brought it to me. How to fight bipolar disorder, depression, and mental illness with routine and regimen and win. And so I looked at this article. I kind of downloaded it into my mind. And I built my own personal mental health regimen or routine. And I won't tell you the whole thing, but I'll certainly tell you where to find it. But I built it built off of the 3 E's. Education as to my diagnosis so I could defeat it. Exercise most days so I could feel better, because 23 minutes of rigorous exercise, as you well know, I know you know this, leads to 12 hours of better mood. Do that twice a day, it's 24 hours of better mood. And then eating healthy foods most days or most meals so you can feed yourself non-inflammatory foods so you feel better. I had a hard time with that during COVID, gained some weight, but I'm working my way back to a healthier living lifestyle. And then therapy is one of them. And that can mean many different things for many different people. I utilize talk therapy, teletherapy, talk therapy, art therapy, music therapy, blue wave light box therapy, and breathwork therapy. All of those things are in my arsenal to stay stable. Let's go into positive coping mechanisms and coping strategies, the hobbies and things you can do to better your brain health, things that keep your mind, working and forming new plans, and learning new life lessons, learning new tools, learning new strategies in life to better your brain health. But also like learning, there's something to be said about constantly being educated by everything you can around you. I just recently invested in masterclass online, so I'm getting all these classes on a regular basis on a variety of topics, and I'm just soaking in the knowledge and trying to turn that into practical results for what I can do to put that into my life somehow, into my businesses, into my practices, into my routines. And so really the 10-step routine you can find at youtube.com/Kevin Hines. There are 500 plus videos, all designed to help you with your mental, brain, mind, behavioral, spiritual, and physical health and well-being. They're designed to help you find hope in your life in your darkest of hours. We've had so many people, thousands of people say that these videos saved their life. And I don't own that. I don't ever say that I saved a life. I've had hundreds of thousands of people write to me over this 20-year period of doing this work, saying that my videos, work, speeches, writings saved or changed their life. I don't own that. I believe that I'm a conduit. I'm a messenger. I give a message, people hear it, they go home, they do the work, they save and change their own life. They just feel like giving credit to me, which is their prerogative. I'm telling you though, if we put out positivity to the world, you know this from what you do. If we put out positivity to the world, positivity will return. Not every time. There are the haters and the people that fight you on things and are negative, but that comes with that's like the course of action that must happen. There's always those people that are negative, and you wish them well and you wish them the best, and you hope that they get the help they need to be positive and more hopeful. But in this journey of the last 20 years, it's been amazing. You know, it's been a beautiful lifelong dream to have the love of my life, my wife, and my best friend, Margaret. I never thought that would happen. I thought I'd be in and out of psych wards for the rest of my life, and I thought that I'd end up dead by 30. But here I am, you know, about to turn 40 with you, you know, and you know, I have my family and my friends close to me. You know, I've got a career I love that means the world to me, and it's not really a career because it's a passion. And it's what drives me, it's what fuels me. And I've gotten to talk to well over 2 million people in person in the last 20 years. My videos have reached over 1 billion people worldwide. You know, this is a great gift for me. I went from a place where I was about to take my life. I tried in a way that is 98% fatal. 98% of the people that do what I did never, ever get to tell their story again. Why did I get to live? Well, maybe it was for this purpose right here, to just try to give back to other people and help them recognize their true value, that they're worthy, and that suicide is never the solution to their problem. It is the problem.
It's incredible what you've achieved. And everyone, for those who are listening, whether you're on YouTube or the podcast, I'll put all the links below so you can check out those YouTube videos and everything like that Kev's just mentioned there, because they're definitely super helpful resources. And just before we dive into the book, Kev, I wanted to ask you one thing, and this is probably more relatable from me. Now that you're a speaker and an advocate and all of these sorts of things around mental health and mental illness, did you ever, or have you ever, or even still, do you feel it's hard to speak up about your own mental health because you're someone who's like the driving force behind that? Or is it or did you at any point?
You know, I'm an open book. So if I go to a presentation and I'm not well mentally, I'm going to say it. If I'm going through depression and I'm dealing with something heavy, I'm going to be honest about it. And in the last, I would say 2 to 4 months, I've been in and out of a pretty dark place. Even before my dad got sick. I've been having a hard time. I've been having a hard time getting back to physical fitness. And I've been having a hard time with my depression, and I've been struggling. But I know how to struggle to defeat that struggle, if you will. You know, I get it. I know exactly what I need to do to come back to a better place. So every time I feel that dip, you know, a few days later, I come back up and I stabilize. If it happens again, I come back up and I stabilize. And I ride that wave like I need to, if I have to. And I'm equipped to do so. You know, I often liken it to this analogy of what pain is. I believe that pain is inevitable, and I believe that suffering is optional. Suffering is a choice. Every clinician I ever dealt with told me I was suffering from bipolar disorder, suffering from manic depression, suffering from depression, suffering from eating disorder when I was. And they told me I was suffering. And thus I adopted that narrative and made it my own. But by doing that, I became the victim of my own story. It was when I decided that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, when I decided that I may have been in pain since the day I was born on 6th Street in a crack motel, but I've never suffered a day in my life. I live with, fight, battle, and thrive despite of my diagnosis. And thus, I can't suffer anymore. I used to write about it, blog about it. No, I don't do that anymore. I take full responsibility for my diagnosis and full responsibility for the things that I've done while sick. And today, all I want to do is help other people find hope so they can heal.
Love that. The ownership. owning all of it, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Let's talk about the book, The Third Rail. So in my mania, I became. So when's that's available on Amazon, right?
That's available on Amazon, and you can go to thethirdRailBook.com for all the information about the book. It's 3RD, so it's not spelled out. It's number 3RD, thethirdRailBook.com. And this book was written in the first person by myself and Jesse Cohen. And Jesse Cohen did the brunt of the work. He was a Tulane law student in the height of the New Orleans organized crime era. And he had bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features. And in his mania, he became a vigilante. He was like Batman, like literally. He with less finances behind him. He would go out at night, donning a black suit, black tie, black shirt, and a baton, some other weapons, and some protective gear. And he would take out criminals based upon the police scanner that he would listen to. He would be trained in Krav Maga by a Vietnam War veteran, and he would go out and he would take out guys that were committing crimes. He got involved in some very scary situations. It's a very intense book, but it's a very real book about what it's like to live inside bipolar mania to the extreme. Jesse's life was incredible. He was one of the most persuasive, intelligent, and incredible human beings you'd ever know. And sadly, Jesse would lose his battle to depression and by suicide right before the book was done. So we had to finish the book with his lovely wife, Mari, together. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. In the opening of the book, Jesse talks about why and how one with suicidal ideations should stay here. And it is palpable. And we're sorry that we lost him. He was like a brother to me. He was really an important person in my life. That's why we decided to go ahead and finish the book and get it out there, because it's a fast-paced read. If you like books, you'll read it in 2 hours. And it's one that will leave with you a vision of what he went through, but you'll also understand why you should stay alive.
Definitely.
Even though Jesse passed.
We've got a book club over here for all of our communities. So we'll put that on the book club for August, September, which would be brilliant to read that, and I'll flick you a message after that. One other thing I wanted to ask you, which I forgot to ask you earlier, Kevin, then we'll let you go get some sleep because I know it's late over there, is for those who are suffering, sorry, I don't want to say suffering, sorry, who are living with mental illness or challenges, how, like going back for you, how would you love people to support or even act around you to make you feel empowered? And it's not even making you feel that way, but like to just best serve you, because I know there's a lot of people who don't really know how to manage the situation and they feel uncomfortable in it. So just that awareness around that.
Let's keep it really simple. Treat me and people like me as a person first, a loved one first, a friend first, and a patient second. Treat me like you would want to be treated if you were in pain of any kind. Ask yourself what that answer is and move forward from there.
That's bloody brilliant, mate. I love it. And I think another thing I've just learned on this chat is the power of language. Like everyone who's listened to this now, like be mindful of how we use language. And, you know, we can feed a narrative, as you said, Kev, you were fed the narrative that you were suffering. And for me, even to pick up that language tip is like, we're living with it. Suffering is a choice. Suffering is optional. And I think the message that you're putting out there, and for everyone listening at home, we have the option. Do you want to thrive or suffer? That's, falls back on us.
It's a matter of perspective and perception. If we perceive ourselves to be sufferers, then we will suffer. If we perceive ourselves to be champions and heroes, while dealing with and living with the psychosis or the struggle or the mental health crisis, then we become that champion and that hero. Like these guys behind me.
You are also writing a comic book.
Yeah, there's a common denominator amongst comic books. Every single character in the comic books we read has a mental health or brain health or physical health flaw. They all have issues in their mental instability, whether it's anxiety, depression, they're polar opposites of their own personality, like say Venom. They all have issues going on inside, and then they have to go out and they have to be heroes. So remember that notion that pain is coming for all of us if it hasn't already, in some way, shape, or form, because at some point in your life, you're going to get to the age where pain's going to come. And that's okay. Look at it not as something that's going to destroy you, but something that you are going to use to build you. And when you do that, you become your own savior. You become your own best friend. And utilize positive self-talk to defeat your negative inner critical voice, so you can always survive that negative inner critical voice, because it happens to everybody. I used to look in the mirror every day when I was going through all the psychosis and hearing the voices tell me I had to kill myself, and hearing the voices tell me I was useless and worthless and had no value. And I remember the day it turned was when I started looking in the mirror and going, no, Kevin, you are worthy, you are valued, you are beautiful, you are loved, you're important, and you matter to me. And it was when I began to repeat that to myself that things began to change in my perception and my perspective. And that was the greatest part about it, because in that perspective and perception, not only did I become the hero of my own story, but I squashed those negative inner critical voices and the auditory hallucinations that would come with them. And it's something that changed my life forever. And when I fall into that depression, I sometimes go back to that mirror and have that conversation with myself. And it's, there's something to be said about reciting, repeating, and believing something. What has every faith we've ever known been built upon? Reciting, repeating, and believing a prayer, right? That's what every faith has ever been built upon. So if you recite and you repeat positive things about yourself, guess what? Over time, you'll believe them and you'll know them to be true. Just like if you recite and repeat and you'll believe negative things. You're literally augmenting your brain chemistry by doing so. It is scientific. It's backed by science, and it's amazing.
It's one of the game changers. I do it every morning. I have a whole heap of them stuck up on the bathroom mirror there that I read every morning when I'm brushing my teeth, and they change every couple of months as I want to think differently about myself. But I also find, and Kev, I've just got off my Bucks party and I don't drink regularly, but I obviously drank a few beers.
So I saw that post.
Oh man. And I've been having what I call the grog horrors, and I've just felt sorry for myself. And I've noticed my self-talk. I'm beating myself up because I'm not as productive or thinking as good about myself, but I also knew this was going to happen, but I'm still keeping those same practices in place where I'm telling myself how I want to think about myself, even through the challenging times. Because otherwise, if I just sat there, my brain is going to start beating myself up in a really unbearable way.
Yeah. Well, you had the fun, you paid the price. Now go look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's always consequences. But Kev, I'll let you get off. I really, really, really am stoked that we got to make this happen. And for everyone who's tuned in and been inspired, there's so many other ways you can connect with Kev. Obviously, head over to the YouTube and I'll put the link there, but it was youtube.com/Kevin Hines. You're available on Instagram. Is Kevin Hines?
Yep. All social media is at Kevin Hines Story.
Yep, a Kevin Hines Story. And so feel free to share what you've taken away from this episode, or reach out and definitely grab his new book, The Third Rail. I'll put the link there as well. Grab that and read and check out. There's so many things we can check out of Kev. So go check out everything he's got available. You've got the website, kevinhinesstory.com, but there's a whole heap of information there. Go check it out. But Kev, thank you so much for staying up late and jumping on and sharing a bit about your story and some incredible tools, tricks, and strategies to, improve your brain health and everything like that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And follow me on TikTok at Kevin Hines Story, because we put out new little videos at 3 o'clock every day, short and sweet, simple and clean, and they help you. So let them help you.
Oh, TikTok. I'll jump on TikTok. It's not one I've been active on, but I'll get everyone over there.
I just started.